Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopkina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News, where we rate articles essential, important, and optional, pointing you to the most important trends that are happening among the lots of news every day, AI news every day. You can follow along with us. The articles are posted on gaiinsights.com website /articles. We have our great crew today. We have John, Ankaj, Adam, Tim, Paul, and Amanda. So lots of opinions. Let's proceed to the first one, Ankaj.
Sure, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Microsoft, and it talks about the path to medical superintelligence.
And a stunning article relating how Microsoft is training models to actually be way more with more ability to diagnose than doctors. What did you think about this, Tim? It's very much close to your heart type of a topic.
It is in almost all dimensions. So I would say certainly for anybody in healthcare, this is particularly clinical healthcare. This is an essential article. I think it's important for the general crowd because health is an area where there's often concern about the probabilistic nature of these large language models. You know, you've got life and death on your hands kind of thing. And this article showed 4 times better diagnosis on the AI versus the humans at lower cost and lower quality, higher quality, I should say. So lower number of tests, lower number of difficult tests, because people forget, like if you know anybody who's ever had a bone biopsy, they're no fun. And so the tendency of doctors to overorder tests is well understood, both because they're trying to do a difficult diagnosis and because they're playing defensive medicine because they don't want to get sued. So in every dimension, the AI was not just better, it was far superior to very sophisticated human diagnosticians. So this isn't even close. It's not even in the same league. So that's an astonishing set of results. It's a research paper. I'm sure there's going to be lots of people who are going to complain about it. But these are complex case diagnostics and very, very difficult for most people to diagnose. And this is getting to be more common because as we understand disease states and molecular biology better, we discover that diseases are not, one thing. They're much more fragmented, much more specific, and every disease becomes a rare disease. This is the other side of personalized medicine. So really an astonishing article from my perspective. And, I just have to say from my heart, I wish we would spend more money on this and less money try and get people to spend more time on Facebook.
Yeah. So, Tim, what's your rating? Important for the general
Or important for the general audience, essential for anybody, particularly in clinical healthcare.
Yeah. Vivek would probably have a lot to say about this as well. Okay, yep. John, what did you think?
Yeah, I was going to give it an important. Just as Tim said, I think there's another interesting implication here when you start to look at the cost. I like this graph in particular. We do the cost quality trade-off. We're looking at somewhere between $2,000 and $8,000 for a judgment on a complex case, if you will, and that number is going to come down very quickly. So when we talk about the commoditization of very leading edge expertise, it's going to get interesting. This particular thing, I agree with you, Tim, that I wish in the panoply of resource allocation, somebody like Mr. Musk might have actually increased research funding for things like this as opposed to cutting it out. Yeah. But whatever, be that as it may, the implication here of access to very important critical knowledge here in healthcare, of course, centrally, makes me super optimistic. I mean, this could be a public good very quickly, or a very low priced, high importance thing. So I was tempted to make it essential, just because differential diagnosis affects almost all of us during our lifetime, but certainly important.
Okay, certainly important. What did you think, Adam?
I think I'd lean on important overall. What I think would tip it into essential, I think Tim pretty much nailed it though, but what would tip it over into essential for me would be if it just spoke a little more about how this actually could apply cross vertically into other industries. Like what's going on under the hood here, there's the idea of this virtual panel of experts, and the way that they've made it modular and model agnostic. It really, like, some of the examples, it was like legal, financial, engineering, education, customer support, like this multi-agent reasoning, but also this cost-effective decision-making is actually really important in a lot of places. And this article could have at least highlighted that, I think, which would have given a little more relevance to how powerful this story really is, to people who aren't specifically in this field, but definitely something to take note of.
Yeah, the reason they are focusing on the medical side, I mean, along with helping tons of people, right? But because there's data and there are cases that are well documented, and you can follow along, and you have the ultimate truth in those cases. You can compare the result at the end, right? So that's why this goes first. But there are industries where this is also the case, and that will be next. I think.
And it's very relevant, yeah.
Yeah, that's very relevant. Okay, sounds good. We go important on this one, essential for medical providers. As Vivek points out, this will go across. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, the next one that we have for today comes from Semi-Analysis, and they are talking about how Oracle is winning the AI compute market.
Yeah, a thoughtful dive into what Oracle was, what Oracle did over the last number of years. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I love our friends over at Semi-Analysis. I mean, this is just a great piece of work. Goes through the big bets that Larry Ellison made pre and post generative AI to get Oracle, into the compute market. I was going to give this somewhere between an optional and important for anyone thinking about, analyzing Oracle, either as a vendor or as an investment. It's absolutely essential. It's beautifully done. It goes through the other thing that's kind of interesting. It goes through some of the dynamics of, demand and supply of data centers. It goes through the vital importance of ByteDance. Interesting, the TikTok purchase that's going to happen now. It's going to get really interesting, because TikTok's going to be a major, consumer of incremental demand. Anyway, so I was going to give this optional, I think, for the AI leader. Maybe important because it's a great read, and anyone interested in Oracle or the dynamics of data center economics, absolutely essential.
Okay, Amanda, what were your thoughts?
I'd say this is important. It's basically saying traditionally companies that might not necessarily be hyperscalers can pretty much capture large market share, GPU deals, things like this, by targeting this underserved neocloud territory and things like this. So at a high level, I'd say this is important.
Okay, Paul, what were your thoughts between optional and important?
Oh, I had optional. I think everyone's still trying to figure out this $30 billion deal that Oracle announced yesterday. But very good article, optional.
Interesting. Adam, optional, important?
I was in the important camp, actually. I think I hadn't really considered what the good solutions are to vendor lock. And if you're with Microsoft and Azure, or you're with Google and GCP, or you're with Amazon and AWS, who's the sort of the Switzerland, right, of cloud compute? And this article makes a good case for why Oracle is someone that you can actually have confidence in, and who is actually positioning themselves really well to offer that low cost alternative. So
Well, talking about Oracle like Switzerland is like talking about.
Well, I mean, when you're locked into Microsoft or Amazon,
there's a
all of a sudden
babysitter.
Oracle is, the neutral ground, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying, Oracle.
Yeah. So, but maybe I don't know how much people realize that there is a Malaysia center with ByteDance essentially taking most of that capability and power. It's a dynamics that are potentially important to the leaders, to the AI leaders. That's why I was leaning into more important. Okay, so Tim, break the tie. Important or optional for you?
I will give this an important. I mean, it's not an essential read for people, but it's a good read, and yeah, it's a reminder that the world isn't static. We think it, maybe to a certain extent it is, but Oracle has certainly shown themselves to be a great and ruthless, I would say, business over decades. Ellison is the best fast follower I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Well,
and he made some bets, and they actually seem to be successful. So let's put it as
Well, he got ByteDance. We don't know if that was luck or smart, but it's
Right.
like the spreadsheet in PCs. If you get the right horse and you ride it, it's going to work.
Yeah.
But I do think it's notable, Tim and Luda, that this is an example of another founder who's back in the game, putting their hands on their steering wheel. So we've seen this Bezos at Amazon, Zuckerberg at Meta, and here at Oracle.
Yeah. Okay. I say, and Ram is talking about that Oracle is used across a lot of enterprises, and it's makes it very important article from that perspective. Important it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one that we have for today comes from Ernie, and they have announced the open source release of the Ernie 4.5 model family.
Yes, Amanda, please tell us about the Ernie and their models. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is just a product announcement. I mean, it starts out with how huge it is, over 400 billion parameters, things like this. It is multimodal, and it's combining that sort of mixture of expert structure, which we've seen in the past, actually, in other articles. And it's talking about more, I'd say, geared toward Asian markets. So it's looking at like DeepSeek, Quen, things like this. So I'd say if you're in Asia or doing business there, maybe this is something to look at. But for me, this is majorly just a product announcement. And so it's very optional.
Okay. Anybody disagreeing? So just a Ernie is comes from the company Baidu. That's that's in China and in that region. Actually, one of the very large companies, and they put together a fund of $145 million to support companies that would use Ernie as their base. So it's an interesting competitor in the brewing, actually, in China.
Yeah, that's why I was going to recommend an important on this one. For that reason, I mean, this is one of the major providers globally, and I think we've seen a number of people, folks like RC, who picked up some of the Quen models. I think we're going to continue to see American innovators grab, and as well as global innovators grab the Chinese models, and this is a great set of models. So I don't know, I was going to give it important.
Okay, Paul, what do you think?
Optional. I'm not sure what I'd do with this as an AI leader.
Use it. Tim, optional, going optional.
Yeah, optional, everyday miracle. I mean, I understand what it's somewhat important because it's a fairly big player, but it's a fairly big Chinese player. But it's and we're going to see these. There is an article from RC about some incredible models coming out as well. So just the bigger picture here is, what does this mean for OpenAI and Claude, Anthropic, and the other closed source models? Unclear,
but it is certainly competition. The models are very powerful, very well trained, and the like. Okay,
yeah.
But going optional. Okay, optional
Luda,
it is.
Luda, the one thing I'll add though is that this is basically the equivalent of Google for China, right?
Yes.
That's really how
Yes.
we think of Baidu.
Yeah.
And
Baidu
what's-
is
we've
a
been talking
major
about what's
player.
speeding up in terms of the answer engines and the competition. The news is less that there are these Ernie models so much as that Baidu is now competing at that level, right? And they're not relying on someone else for it.
And
that
they
might make
ask-
it important, but generally the models themselves are top competitors, but they aren't doing anything innovative or new. It is just a product announcement.
It's just a product, right? But Baidu is also, like Google, under the stress because they are losing the advertising revenue 6% per quarter, 6%, big time. So that means that they will focus on these models and focus on this gaining that back, right? And that will create much more competition to Google. So in that sense, this is, like John pointed out, important. But I mean, product announcement models, optional. All right, optional it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from RC. So RC has released 5 open weights models.
Yes. We know RC, GAI Insights knows us, RC. They are focused on providing smaller models trained in particular verticals, but here they are opening them up. Tim, what did you think?
Again, as similar to the last thing, Everyday Miracles, unbelievably great looking models, even in smaller parameter scale. Lots of new techniques still being employed algorithmically to make these models better with lesser parameters. So it's great stuff. It's open weights. It's an Apache 2.0 license, which is great. I wish they would release their data, but at least they've released the rest of it. So really interesting Everyday Miracle. It's a product announcement. They're not Baidu or Google, so I'd have to say optional.
Okay, going optional here. Anybody who objects? Paul?
Optional.
Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one is a case study from Anthropic, which talks about how Brex reimagined spend management with Claude in Amazon Bedrock.
Interesting. We usually see these cases from Amazon Bedrock. This time it's coming from Anthropic. What did you think about this, Adam?
I think overall I was leaning towards optional on this, and I'll explain why. It is a great use case. It has great numbers in terms of a case study. As you see there, what it helps Brex do in terms of expense transaction, it's really rebuilding the whole process of expense management for an organization as AI first from the ground up. And it illustrates that well. It doesn't go into much detail. And frankly, the fact that it was Claude and that it was AWS are almost irrelevant to the story. So yes, it's great that Anthropic won the business. It's great to understand that you can run Claude on AWS, and that's what Brex is doing. But mostly, this is just a story of like one of the great things you can do with generative AI that has some impressive numbers. But so I was sort of on the fence between optional and important.
Would the fact that this is expense management that applies to pretty much anybody out there, would that take you into important? Okay, so we have an optional from Adam.
Probably important, Luda. You raise a really good
important.
point.
Okay. What did you think, John?
Just be clear, though. I mean, Brex is a vendor that sells. So this is a software vendor that's putting AI into it. This is not a major company using AI for expense management. Major companies would buy Brex.
Right. But the results are really incredible from what they could, what this article says, right? They've reduced the time in expense management dramatically, made it conversational, made it contextual. It's really, they're changing the way we do expense management, really. So
Luda, you're very kind, but this is a vendor who's selling software products, making savings without unverified numbers.
Yeah, no, that's true. Okay, going optional. Amanda, Tim? Okay.
Yeah, I was on the fence to important, but as Paul points out, if they had one or two customers, then it would have been really important. But as Paul said, this is calculated savings, not we are doing this for Amex or, JP Morgan or somebody, GM.
I did take what's interesting is the general trend is that when you look at indirect cost in any company, that number is shrinking tremendously. And, this is just, I don't think people have even begun to think through what organizations look like, when we really apply AI, because you think of all the bureaucratic rules and all the stuff, Luda, you and I had to live with inside. When I was at PwC, you're a GE,
Yeah.
I mean, my assistant would handle all this stuff, right? I mean, but it took her a long time. And, this is going to be completely different.
Yeah, and this is a glimpse. I mean, yeah, you can't quite trust these numbers, but it is a glimpse into what's to come. Okay, it sounds optional. Let's proceed then. Ankash, please.
Okay, the last one that we have for today talks about how long contexts fail.
Yes, we had a discussion about that just recently. The long context can present issues, especially to agents. And Amanda, what could you please tell us about that and tell us what you think?
So for me, this article's optional. One thing I would say is for U.S. companies, we were continuously told between the number of parameters to look for, right? Like that last article with 400 billion. Also these long context windows. And as maybe a replacement for some sort of like retrieval pipelining and things like this. And that lends itself to agentic AI development and things like this. But a lot of the Asian companies like Baidu came up and things like this. We saw in that article, they're investing in like multimodal models, this mixed agents and all these different things going on, dual mode reasoning and things like this. So what I would say, even though this is optional, it's just interesting though to see how globally how we're looking at things and how they differ. But again, to me, this article is very optional.
So as a reminder, when long context windows and Google pioneered it, I think the long context came around. It was a big deal. And now we're talking about all these four fails that this article points out: context poisoning, context distraction, context confusion, and context clash. That various things can happen when this context window actually is a detriment versus the plus. So what did you think about this, Adam?
I was actually in the important camp. We haven't seen much thought leadership or really insight into this problem. And I think there was an article last night as well. They don't just talk about the problems. They go on to present solutions and how you can address all of these things. And I think that's the right approach to educating people about these challenges. And when we have articles that emphasize something that's going to be a core part of a lot of people's pipelines, and then they actually say, well, not only are these 5 things, but here's what you can do about them. If you go to the very bottom, there's a whole separate article then about, okay, so how do you solve these challenges, which references this, how to fix your context. So it's, I put it in the important camp, actually.
Okay.
I
just put it in the super optional camp. The
Excellent, little conflict.
Little
conflict. We get a lot of people asking us to enjoy our conflict.
Yeah, I mean, this to me is like the advice against stupid gun loading. It's like, okay, when you're loading your gun and you're pointing it toward your feet and you put it in, don't pull a hammer back and shoot your foot. It's like, okay, you have a long context window. Don't put, conflicting information in it. It's like, okay, anyway, these are some of my pet peeve articles to really dislike structurally. So anyway, I was more optional.
Yeah, and here's Vivek with essential rating. And the reason being is, and he is actually right, because the idea was, look, you don't need RAG, you don't need industry expertise. You just load it all into this million token window, and it will be miraculously come out with the right answer. Now we realize it's certainly not.
Yeah,
right?
But it's like, so you inform the stupid not to do stupid things. Is that interesting? I don't know.
Well, but it is good to be aware of. All right,
yeah.
Tim, what do you think?
I think I'm optional on this, but for an entirely different reason. I think this is This is the problem that we have right now is we're driving a research-oriented field with commercial activity. And so random things happen because they might make money. And nobody's actually put any scientific thought into it. So anybody who understands how these models work at a mathematical level understands context at levels we're not discussing. And so it's just a whole statistical game. And this is not surprising at all because it's all about the statistics. And but nobody cares, right? Nobody's really thinking about it. So the real issue is, how does context impact the statistical analyses of these larger models? It's just more matrix algebra at the end of the day. It's just big matrices, and they get confused if you do certain things. And what really should be of interest to people is, what could we do to make these things better in doing what we really want them to do, which is reason about the world, as opposed to how are we going to fix the pimple on their face in the current version, is the way I might think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting you said it, Tim, back on the Microsoft doctor thing. I'm not aware of any papers that basically try to get into why is the math of experts come out with something that generally is a better solution. I don't have
a whole very interesting area of research that not much has been done on right now. Yeah.
But realistically, this is actually pretty important for the creation of agents. If the leaders are not aware of it, you can go. Agents can really misfire here.
I don't believe that for a second. That's based on complete pseudoscience. That's based on their definition of an agent as an incremental gathering technique. If you're conversational with an AI, it's doing incremental gathering, it's incremental context. All these problems can be fixed actually within the model. And they probably will be, because they can just go back and say, well, don't pay so much attention to the first things you hear. It's one of the things that humans learn when they start to reason more deeply, is be careful about the first things you hear, because as Danny Kahneman has taught us, we tend to anchor around those first things we hear, and later facts don't have as much impact.
Okay, lots of arguments for optional. It's only Adam and me kind of hanging on the important. Amanda, yeah. So Amanda, you rated it optional. Anybody else for important? Democracy wins. Optional it is. This is, as Ankash prepares the scorecard for today, what do we have in terms of announcements? Paul, John?
We had a really good learning lab last night. Mark and Paul from a software company called Invoice Cloud walked through how they did a business case justifying Microsoft Copilot automating some of the internal tasks. And to John's earlier point, a lot of examples are around these indirect things. Take 15 to 20 or 3 to 4 days to get a password reset that set up a Copilot that did it within minutes here. So real good example. That the video is now posted on YouTube.
Okay, so what do we have for today? We have 2 importance and 4 optional. Thinking back, we probably should have rated the medical one as essential. But what it is, this is what it is.
Go for it.
You still get the chalk.
Go for it.
No, I think this was right. Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Vivek, Ram, other listeners and participants. Really appreciate your input. Thank you, analysts. Really appreciate it. I will see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.